You're listening to Psych with Mike. For more episodes or to connect with the show with comments, ideas, or to be a guest, go to www.psychwithmike.com. Follow the show on Twitter @PsychWithMike or like the Facebook page @PsychWithMike. Now, here's Psych with Mike.
Welcome into the Psych with Mike Library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan, and I am actually here with Mr. Brett Newcomb.
Hello.
And mystery guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, yeah.
I thought you were going to do my intro.
I can.
No, it's all right. My name is Michelle Steeg. I am a former student of both of yours. But I'm a licensed professional counselor here in St. Louis as well. And I'm here to put my 2 cents in today.
And I think that anybody who heard you say that should not hold that against you.
Fair. It's fair, right? Because if the therapy sucks, y'all train me, right?
Survival
Here
of
we
the
go.
fittest.
I know. Now, anybody who's ever been in therapy with Michelle says, oh, well, that explains it.
Makes sense now.
Now I get it.
It all checks out.
So we wanted to get together because my understanding is, Michelle, that you had a conversation with Brett about some epiphanies that you had had. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about that and how that happened for you?
Sure. So I was, by volume, I've seen more women in my career, but I also think that's just because more women seek out counseling services. But I would really say that I do specialize in working with men and adolescent boys. And that's been typically from the very beginning of my career. And so I've seen quite a few more men over the past few years, and I would say about 70% of my practice at this point has been men. And what I had reached out to him about for a potential topic with you guys was just some patterns that I've been seeing, and it really goes kind of across the board with all of the men whom I see. And so then I was just also kind of observing the men in my life and seeing some of the similar patterns. And so, a consistent theme that I see with men who come into my office is a genuine lack of self-awareness. Mm-hmm. People, not just men, will come to counseling and say, I'm coming to you for this issue, and here's what I want to get out of therapy. Mm-hmm. And we all know that that's, what the presenting issue is never
the issue.
Is never the issue.
Right.
But I tell people all the time, men and women alike, that I cannot offer you anything you are seeking without the awareness. If you don't have the awareness of the patterns and the things that you're doing in your life, I can't offer you anything that you've come here seeking.
So what you're saying is they have to be self-aware.
Correct.
But I would suggest that you can facilitate that if they don't have it, as
Absolutely.
long as they're open to the process.
Yes, they have to essentially surrender to the process and surrender to the fact that they aren't self-aware.
So, I want to lay this on the table. Mm-hmm. I have also seen Michelle in therapy as my therapist. I practiced therapy as a clinician for 35 years.
Yeah.
And then I retired, and in retirement decided it was time to do something that people told me for 35 years I needed to do, which was go to therapy. And I thought, the hell, I know everything. Why would I do that?
Amen.
And I had also read a book, which I think is seminal for me. The book was Maybe You Should Speak to Someone, mm-hmm. about a therapist who went to therapy. So I went to Michelle, and I was worried about that because of the dynamics of our history, student, friend, therapist, and all the corruption of those relationships. But I was more worried about that because of what I knew about myself.
Yeah.
In that I can be very competitive and very gamey and play lots of head games. Mm-hmm. And I had to be, and I ask you to
help
help
me. As a way
me.
to insulate you from having to be real?
Yes.
Yeah.
And to protect me and keep me in a power position, to control the circumstances.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I asked Michelle to do, I said, I am going to make an honest effort not to play those games, mm-hmm. and not to be the professor, the knowing therapist, the mentor, whatever, but be me and look in the mirror for me.
And you wanted her to hold you
point
to
it out whenever she
mm-hmm. saw
saw me not doing it. And also to compound that issue, my wife was sitting there because she went with me. So these two women who know me very well, I asked them, if I'm doing the bullshit thing, please point that out. They were more than happy to do that.
She and I were great co-therapists.
Oh, you
together.
were. You were.
It was really
Co-therapy is always helpful. So that's all. I want to put all that on the table before we got into this conversation about awareness, because I think it's critical. The critical piece.
Is.
So, in response to what you were saying, Michelle, as far as the idea of being more aware, I only can come at that from my own experience as a man, but also as somebody who's been in therapy, done a lot of therapy over the years. And I remember when I first started in the process of recovery, there was a Christmas, and my wife had put the tree up and had strung the lights on it. And after she had done that, she had asked me, "Do you want to help me put the ornaments on the tree?" Mm-hmm. And I said, "Oh, I got your ornaments right here." And I was taking these glass ornaments and I was flinging them up against the fireplace.
Yeah.
And so, I was just thinking about a 4-step. For people who don't know, a 4-step is where you do a fearless and searching moral inventory. And the first thing that I put on my 4th step was, people make me angry. And so that was my first
I thought you said you were going to buy her some Christmas ornaments.
No, well, somebody had to go buy some new Christmas ornaments. Because she was like, you're insane, you're crazy. And I was like, oh, well, see, here's the problem is people make me angry.
You make me angry.
See what you
people
make me do.
Yeah.
And then after a while, when I was able to sit with that and think about it, then I realized, oh, no, I get angry.
Right.
And then I realized, oh, I get angry because I'm insecure, because Christmas in my house growing up was a time of fear, not a time of joy. And so what I want to make sure that people understand is that level of awareness is a process.
Yes.
And you don't have to get to a point of complete nakedness in the first session.
No.
You should go through a process, because that's the only way that you're going to allow yourself to be real and genuine.
And that's my job.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my job, to walk you through that process, because if you could do it on your own, we wouldn't be here. But I also want to state, like, for the record, on record somewhere here in your Psych with Mike library, that it was the privilege of my career to work with you. So I need that stated. Now, with that said...
that'll get edited out.
No, it won't.
Okay.
No, it won't. I would say, yeah, that's my job, is to get you to that level of awareness. And it's a bit of an arduous process, because I think, as we were talking before, so much of a man's experience, from their childhood on, has to be performative, right? So we're constantly competing with one another, trying to keep up with each other, trying to not look weak, trying to not look vulnerable, trying to look strong. So everything up until a certain point in a man's life has really been performative. So it would make sense that men struggle to have a lot of that self-awareness. And we think, yeah, people make me angry, when it's actually so much deeper than that. And I say it all the time, like, that's why men are so beautifully complicated, because it's not that they're being obstinate in not having the self-awareness. They often just truly don't ever see it.
It's the play of the game.
Yeah.
And that's what they learn. I'm interested in, as you're saying this, are you framing that in terms of men's interactions and relationships with other men, or also with women?
I think it's all relative. I think it starts with other.
Say more.
Yeah, so I think it starts with other men. When I was in education, the last building I worked in was with 600 teenage boys, all day, every day. So it was. I mean, what I saw was just this highly competitive, constant flexing, constant roasting. I would have kids come in, the seniors would come in, and they would be bawling, saying, like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Brett looks like he knows exactly where he's going. He wants to be an engineer. He's going to Rolla. That's how it is. I'd get him packaged up out the door, and Brett would walk right in. And Brett would be crying, going, everybody thinks I should be an engineer, and I don't want to do it, but it looks like Mike knows exactly what he's doing. So it was this constant cycle of performing that I then saw carry over, like, in my practice, like with females, but they weren't even necessarily aware that they were doing it. But they did, with females, have the ability to soften. And the females were able, their girlfriends or their partners were able to kind of pull out of them more of that sensitive, intimate layer.
Yeah. And it would approach it from that perspective of, I want that piece from you. I want that. I want to know more about you. And often men will look up and say, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have that piece.
Right.
Why are you asking me for that?
One of my favorite things with men, I had this one client who had, so my favorite clients to work with are men who think therapy is bullshit. It's my favorite. I love it. Like, they set my world on fire. So I have a guy I'm working with who thinks therapy is bullshit, of course. And he says I asked him something. I said, how did it make you feel? And he goes, frustrated. Because that's typically the first thing I hear from men. I'm either angry or frustrated. I've also never met a man who wasn't completely terrified of his anger on some level. But he says, it makes me really frustrated. I said, okay, say more about that. Tell me more. And he goes, I don't know how. And we both started laughing because it's true. And it wasn't that I was laughing because I was making fun of him. It's true. They don't know how.
And part of that is vocabulary.
Correct.
And being able to say I'm frustrated instead of I'm angry is a big step.
Right.
I mean, it's a breakthrough.
Yes.
And then you try to teach them other words for different layers of intensity. I'm pissed off. I'm miffed. I'm irritated.
Right.
I'm mad. I'm angry. I'm rageful. Those levels are things that they were not taught to distinguish.
No.
They might be taught to read them in observation of another man.
Correct.
What's the temperature here? Is he going to hit me?
Right.
Go to Fist City. But in terms of looking in the mirror and seeing that, no.
Yeah.
Well, I always started off, especially with men, by saying that big boys don't.
Correct.
Fear is a sign of
weakness.
And so did.
He does this to me, and I won't answer.
He won't answer.
Really
Yeah.
I know. This is my first time. I'll let him hang there.
You can do whatever you want.
I'll let him hang next time.
But I've been asking those questions for close to 40 years, and so thousands and thousands and thousands of times, never gotten a different answer. And I would implore someone to tell me where these things are written down. That's 50% of the human emotional spectrum, that we tell men they don't have the right to feel. And there's a lot of shame that goes into feeling those things. And that, to me, is the big hurdle that we go into therapy with men fighting against, is how do we make it okay for these guys to allow themselves even to contemplate that it's okay to experience the complete spectrum of human emotions. You're a human being. Biologically, endocrinology-wise, you are going to have these experiences. What do you do with that when you have this experience and then this shame message tells you that you shouldn't have it? You're going to sublimate that emotion. You're going to take that energy. You're going to dump it into something else. And usually that's anger. Yes. And so these guys present as horribly, horribly angry. And it's only because they're taking all of the energy for every emotion they've ever felt in their life, and they're dumping it into being mad because they don't know what else to do.
Yes, and then again, like I said, I've never met a man, though, who was not acutely afraid of his anger. But the shame that men carry is profound. Like the insecurity and shame that runs through their veins, just existing, I don't know, I have a lot of empathy in working with men, because underneath that anger is so much softness that the world has kind of shamed out of them.
So, a question from you. How, as a woman and a therapist, how aware are you of being able to sit in a room with a rageful male and not having your own echoes in response to that, of anxiety or fear or submission? Because when I taught for 35 years people to be clinicians, that was a real issue for women wanting to be therapists. How do you get out of your own way with your own past and your own history of responding to angry men? Because the critical point, I believe, and said throughout all these podcasts that we've done, is you have to create the safe holding environment. He has to be able to be there and
Rage
be present with those feelings, and you have to be able to hold that and not come with your own issues.
Before you answer that question, we're going to go to our break, and then we'll have you answer that question on the other side.
Okay.
Wow, we've already done half of this? Time flies.
That'll get edited out.
Right.
One hopes.
Hey everybody, Dr. Michael Mahan here from Psych with Mike, and I couldn't be more excited to talk to you about Athletic Greens, which is a new sponsor we have here on the show. I started taking Athletic Greens, watching some YouTube videos and doing my own research. I wanted to add something to my daily workout program to give me some energy and to support gut health. And that was the one thing that kept coming up again and again with Athletic Greens, is the guy who started the company did a bunch of research because he was having some gut health issues that he couldn't get any resolution for. He developed Athletic Greens, and it's just exploded from there. So it's 75 superfoods, vitamins, minerals, probiotics, whole food sources that's all in one daily scoop. You put it in 8 or 12 ounces of water, you shake it up, and you drink it. The taste is very, very drinkable. I actually enjoy it, and I have been using it, and my energy levels have just been through the roof. I really like Athletic Greens because of some of the sustainability things that they do. So they buy carbon credits and, to help protect the rainforest, which is something that I really like. But if you order Athletic Greens in your subscription, you're going to also get a year's supply of their vitamin D supplementation and 5 free travel packs. And that vitamin D is so important during those winter months when we're not getting enough sunlight. We've talked about how that decreases your mood and increases depression, and that can be a real deal changer. So you go to athleticgreens.com/emerging. That's athleticgreens.com/EMERGING. That's the Psych with Mike promo, and you're going to get that additional vitamin D support for a year and 5 free travel packs. So take control of your own health today. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.
Okay, we're back. And so the question is, again, can you...
Yeah, as a female sitting in the room with a really intensely angry man, how do you create a safe holding environment for him to experience those feelings without having your own alarms set off for your safety?
So a couple things. First off, my vetting process in working with men. I do believe that I specialize in working with men, but I'm also not going to work with a man who I don't, just off the street. He's going to have a referral from somebody that I know and trust, or that I've worked with in the past,
right.
Because I know the relationships there, and they wouldn't send me anybody who would harm me.
Okay.
So first, that's kind of the first piece is the vetting process. But I think you have to understand too that my entire history has been surrounded with men. My 2 mentors were men, Jerry Johnson and Tom Mickler.
Both of them, don't you, Mike?
I do.
So they were my mentors when I was in school with you guys.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I had you, right? We stayed in contact. You were profoundly impactful in my life. Then I was already working with men doing therapy. I'm in my own therapy. But working especially with high school adolescent males really set the foundation for me to be able to sit with grown men in their anger, because
you could see the high school boy in there.
Absolutely. So it's crazy because when I have a grown man, and I'm picturing a handful of my clients. They are over 6'3", massive men, filled with rage in front of me.
Yeah.
And I see a kid.
Yeah.
So when I experience male rage in front of me, there is something that happens in my system that immediately softens.
So you see woundedness.
I do. I really do. Because anger is a bullshit emotion. It's a mask. It's sadness's bodyguard. You know, it's hurt's bodyguard, or at least that's how I see it in most instances. So as soon as that rage comes up, I'm not activated because I see harm, I see shame, and I also build, I feel like, the relationship with the men that I work with, like, they're not going to hurt me.
Yeah.
They care about me.
Yeah.
And they know that I care about them, so, like, it's not threatening to me.
So you can do the reflective listening to say, I feel your rage. I feel you wallowing in it. But I also know that you're not going to hurt me or yourself
No.
in this moment.
Correct.
And so can you talk out loud about what you're feeling? Can you put words to it?
Yeah.
That's an invitation and an observation, but it's also a message.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Because you have to think about it too. Like, the men that I work with, they get really protective of me too.
Absolutely.
And they are afraid to rage in front of me because they don't want to scare me. And so it's this shift of energy that happens in that moment in the relationship where I have to show them that I'm not afraid of them.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of...
Not in a muscle up, I'm not afraid of you,
Correct.
I can take you out. But in I understand what this is happening inside you, and I'm not afraid of it.
I
Yes.
don't tolerate your anger and not shy away from it.
Or need to control it, or shut it down.
Control it, right.
So can you then allow yourself to not be afraid of it? Because that's right. The next step is that how do you then take that and, for me, when I work with men in that situation, my next step is going to be, what are you mad about? What's going on here? Because anger is a part of the fight or flight syndrome. So the only rational reason to experience anger is if you're going to defend yourself. So you have to feel that whatever the threat is significant enough that would be a warranted response. What's happening in this moment that would make you feel this way? And 99.9% of the time, the answer is nothing. And so it's not really anger. It's covering for something else.
Fine. I'm fine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I lost it.
That's because you're old.
That's what?
Nothing.
Because I'm old. And that's because I don't hear. If you can invite them... Oh, I know what it was. As a clinician, one of the skills that you have to learn is to avoid countertransference. And countertransference issues are so subtle, you don't always see them coming. You don't know that you have them unless maybe you're in therapy yourself, which I avoided. But how do you not steer away and redirect the conversation, redirect the emotional experience? How do you just sit in the presence of intense emotions, whether it's grief or rage or sadness or loss or guilt or shame, whatever it is, without steering it from your own agendas? That to me is a clinical question, and 3 clinicians in the room. How do we learn to do that? How do we do that in a way that then facilitates the client being able to safely be held while they feel whatever they need to feel, and then help them put words to it? And I'm curious what you both think about that.
Well, I would say, you've experienced, so I am trained to do internal family systems therapy, so parts work. In IFS, we talk about dropping into self. So essentially what that means is I'm not blended with a bunch of parts that are trying to take me places or protect me or whatever. So essentially I've kind of trained my body to become acutely aware of what it looks like, what it feels like in my system when I have dropped into self.
When you flare, when you trigger.
Correct. So I'm really aware of the chatter that I hear in my head. I think that you have to train yourself to be acutely aware of parts that step into that have an agenda or they're trying to lead. Yeah. Because when I'm in self, when I'm sitting with one of those clients who's raging or just filled with grief or shame, I tell people all the time, and it's something that I do hear when I'm in self, is my job is not... My job is to hear you in a way that no one in your life possibly can.
Yes.
That's
Including yourself.
including absolutely.
Yeah.
And so when I hear a lot of chatter, I know something's happening there, and so I can redirect myself, or I tell my client flat out, like, can you
I can't listen right now.
right. I'm hearing a lot of
Yeah.
chatter in my head right now, so that tells me something's happening here. So can we redirect this? I don't know. That's kind of how I approach it.
And for me, when I hear that chatter, what that says to me is there's something real going on, and this chatter is specifically designed to elicit a response from me because people are so afraid of silence. And so if the chatter comes up and then I react to it, now we're running down the rabbit hole of I'm chasing the chatter. And I think that is the point at which silence is a profoundly powerful tool. Don't respond.
Absolutely.
Let people experience the emotion. Don't touch them. Don't talk to them.
Clinical skill.
Yeah,
Yes.
just
Absolutely.
let them be with it. And I say, I'm going to let you simmer a minute, and we're going to see what happens. And you're going to be the next person to respond.
So Michael Garanzini
Yeah.
taught us,
Yeah.
you and I at
Yeah.
any rate, about projective identification.
I really like him.
And his understanding of that was that if you sit in the silence and feel the emotions from the client, then you need to ask the client your definition or understanding of what you're feeling. Is it possible that this is coming from you? Is that a message from you that I need to hear? And clients will typically go, oh, no, that's not me. I
Right.
wouldn't feel that or say that. But Michael taught us to do that and to work with the data feedback that we were getting,
Yes.
because it's a discovery process. It's an invitation to the client that says it's really okay if these are words that we use. It's really okay if these are feelings that we have. We can have those. We're in here with the door closed. Nobody else knows.
Yep.
And then we can process that. What does it feel like to be asked that question?
Right.
If you can't feel the feeling, can you feel what it feels like not to be able to feel the feeling?
Now-
Can we discuss that?
I do want to say, since
Yeah.
we are this is specifically designed to be targeted to people who may be doing therapy,
Right.
that one of the things that I am very, very specific about when we get to this point, especially with men, is I don't want you to act in the real world the way you're acting in this room right now. I don't want you to take this and act this way because you think this is the way you're supposed to act,
And or because you're not ready yet.
Right.
Right.
You can't take this show on the road.
Exactly. Right. So it's okay for you to feel this here, for you to behave this way here, but that doesn't mean you should behave this way everywhere. Maybe you will eventually, but not right now.
It's unsafe.
Right.
Yes.
It would be unsafe for them to do that. And explaining that to them along the way shows them that, like, I want you to do this the right way,
And
because
you
I
have
don't.
options. You have power.
Exactly. You've got options, you've got power, and every time you do that and explain that to them, you're creating more awareness. You're modeling the awareness for them. Like,
Yes.
it's such a journey, and
And the safety.
the
The
safety.
safe holding.
Right.
We can have these. You've married couples going through divorce counseling or marriage counseling that may
Yeah.
lead to divorce. I would often tell them one of the common daydream, night dream fantasies that people in your situation have is they fantasize that their partner was killed in a car wreck, or that they're walking down the street and a tree falls on them or something and they die. Because being the widow or widower who now is free from the constraints of this dysfunctional relationship,
Right.
but without any responsibility,
Yes.
is what your
Right.
subconscious is telling you. Wouldn't that be nice?
Right.
And then they look at each other and they both go like,
But what they don't acknowledge to themselves is through their own passive aggressive behavior, they've been trying to play out that fantasy for how many years
Yeah.
before they came to the office. So people do that, and I tell people all the time, your partner is engaged in a passive aggressive activity that is designed to get you to leave so that they can then say it's not my fault.
exactly.
Right.
Well, it goes back to what Michelle said initially. It's not my fault. I
Yeah.
didn't do it. I
Right.
don't have the power. Let's see what you made me do.
Right. The power to not make choices, to force people into corners so they make the choices on your behalf.
And it's just such a delusion because the only thing that any of us actually have control over is our own behavior and our own thinking. But we delude ourselves into believing that we should have control over all of everything everybody else does and never take responsibility for what we do. It's just so backwards, but it feels comfortable.
But it's also a great game that clients can play in therapy. If I can get you to talk to me about why did my father do this? Why did he behave this way? Why did he treat me this way? Instead of me talking about what did it feel like to me?
Correct.
Or how can I respond differently so that I don't become my father?
But I think that also depends on the clinician that you're working with. If they're able to catch that we're focusing just on your
On
dad
somebody
instead
else,
of
yeah.
we're not talking about you.
Yeah.
Which again, I think with men in particular, that's an easy dance to do.
Yes.
And you have to be able to hear it as their therapist and pick up on it. Like, I see what your dad has done here, but let's talk about you and that impact on you.
Right. So it's not that the information from the family of origin isn't important, but the only way that it's important is how did that behavior, how did those situations cause you to feel and respond?
I used to have that conversation with people with abuse histories all the time to say, you are not responsible for how you got here. You are a survivor of other people's victimization. What you are responsible for is how you leave here. And you can have the power and the freedom to make these choices and do different things and live differently. But you have to do that. You know, and if you just keep looking in your navel and saying, oh, this happened, this is tragic, you won't ever be any different.
No, and your relationships will never go to the depths that you're probably seeking.
Yeah.
So that actually is a good point for us to bring this thing to a close. Let me just say that was an incredibly clinical discussion.
It's about my damn time.
It's a good thing you brought me in to really do the good work. You know what I mean? You're welcome.
As always, the music that appears in Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue, and what we are asking people to do is find us on the internets, go to Apple Podcasts, find Psych with Mike, and give us a rating and leave us a comment. That is super beneficial. But the most helpful thing for us is for everybody to go to the YouTubes, find Psych with Mike, and subscribe to the show there. Even if you access the show primarily through the audio version, if you would go to the YouTubes and subscribe to the show on YouTube, that's super, super beneficial. And as always, if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.